Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who plays mortals for weaklings and fools.
Tim Longo.
Yes, we just discovered that you have not gotten to the point where that line is said, or some variation of that line is said, and so you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Hello.
I can't wait now.
Hello, we are the Immortals, who are now vampires, apparently. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Yeah. It's past. Halloween is beyond. Is beyond. So.
It lives always in my heart.
It is, yes.
You know, having recently portrayed a vampire, having now come up with an undead-based character for D&D, I'm very.
It's on the brain.
It's in the groove. I'm in the groove right now. I get it. You know, although maybe I don't always get the vampire aesthetic with it. I'm more of a medieval vampire guy. Anyway, let's talk. So last time, one of the things we specifically kind of set aside was the Warrens, which is what I was in the middle of, and what that whole space was like. And that is one. So far, it's been the roughest section of the whole game for me. I found it very frustrating. Even when I figured out what to do at certain points, I was having trouble doing it, etc. So it was a bit much for me.
Yeah. I mean, you specifically mentioned in I think in text or something that there's a couple puzzles. It's funny because that section, it changes so drastically. Well, drastically maybe overstating it, but it changes so drastically from the rest of the game in a way. It turns almost into a Half-Life game, like a first-person shooter or something, with these sort of pseudo puzzles, but they're kind of like not fully. I don't know. I just don't think they're fully implemented or fully like play tested or something.
Yeah, no, I remember. Linear. The thing I thought of was like in the Half-Life 2, like the first like buoyancy puzzle with the boxes or whatever. There's one very early in Half-Life 2. You know, it's like 4 or 5 hours in tops, and you know, and you have to shoot out this board, and you know, so there's destruction, and then the boxes fall down, and I thought, oh, this is what this engine could do, and so they're trying to make use of it. But it was, you know.
Well, with the one that you got stuck on specifically, that we both did actually, by the way, it took me a while to really make that one work. But you're talking about there's that.
There's barrels basically that you have to jam a thing with, you know, to get up into a tunnel.
Sewage. Oh, yeah. You're talking about the spinny thing. The spinny.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to jam that, and there's 2 of them, but only one of them has a tunnel over it that you can actually go through. So I jammed the one further away, which is where the barrels were. I was like, oh, cool, I figured it out. And then there's nothing. You can't. That's just a dead end tunnel, which I also want to say is not a thing. Like, you don't build sewage pipes that just don't go anywhere. So it was also just like, come on, guys, like, make it line up with the other one and the 2 funnel into one thing, you know. You know, so that you solve it either side. Like, you know, I don't know, there was just lots of things like that I was very frustrated with the section by. I get how it happens, you know. I get the motivation, like we want to motivate where the creatures come from that you're fighting. So we have all these like sewer pipes, but they don't go anywhere. So there's just a lot of weirdness like that in that whole section. Plus, when you're in the water, I basically found I had to use the use key to get on the ladder instead of just kind of bumping up against it, which is what you can do most of the time. So I also had that.
I didn't know you could do that. Actually, I didn't know you could use the use key. It is a pain in the butt to get out of water. But
it really is. So
I think I would just finagle my way, you know, jump up and kind of just very awkwardly do it.
I think there's some kind of weird skill there. Like if you time your jump exactly right, you can get out of the water. Which is, you know, that's not that's more of a 90s thing problem, but with this game I could totally get it. New engine and what can it do, blah blah blah. I see how they get to the problems that they have. And I don't really fault them for it, but it's also at the same time, it's like, I don't know, put a ramp. Just make it easy. Your game is not about this, so don't try to make it about this all of a sudden in the middle. Was kind of a weird thing for me.
And I think that's generally how Valve would solve some of those problems, right? They would use level design to in the way that things that weren't not the strengths of the engine, they would use level design to make them better than they have any right being. But I just feel like they didn't take that extra step in this case. And I think in general that the Warrens is a good example of, I think, probably the lack of playtesting that they were able to go after for this game compared to the amount that Valve does or something like that to try to be apples to apples engine wise, at least. Yeah, I didn't get stuck on that particular one. I actually, the one that took me a while to get through was the pump one, the water pump one where you had
that one too. But please describe it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm not even sure I completely could. There's these two tanks that you find through swimming down some pipes that you see openings up above, and so clearly you need to fill the tanks up. And the way you got down there was to actually turn these pumps off that would prevent you from swimming down the pipes to the tanks, because it was causing a current, that would push you back in the water. And so you're like, okay, I got to turn it off. But then you realize, okay, obviously I need to pump on to be able to fill the tank. And then after a lot of trial and error, I realized it's timing related, in that you can turn the pump on, but before it fully gets up to its full speed, thus pushing you back, you can sneak through before that into the tank and not get pushed back, and then be inside a full tank. And I think that I didn't quite there were enough negative reinforcement signals in that process where I thought, no, I just don't think this is what I'm supposed to do. It was what I was supposed to do, but there were enough signals telling me the opposite that, again, I'm not trying to pit, Troika against Valve, but I think Valve often does a much better job at telegraphing this stuff to the player. If your instinct is a certain thing and you're on the right track, you need to make sure the player stays on that track and isn't just, discouraged from doing the thing that they actually thought they were supposed to do. And so, I mean, it's a combination of timing, signaling, a lot of different things that sort of are pushing against it.
Yeah, you say that. I mean, the thing is it's not hard. It's not hard to do that. Like you put a note, right? I mean, this game is not shy about putting notes down. Like it's not in the ledger or whatever, those things that you pick up, I guess they're probably missable, but you could literally put one on a clipboard in that room that has the electricity that you can turn off, right? Because there's also an electrical problem. When you first get into that room, so you can turn it, but if there's a clipboard there that says, hey, we've seen fish swimming up into the reservoirs, we can't have that, so we've installed a pump. Note, it takes a moment to turn on, so you may need to drop this gate or blah blah blah. Just something that just says, just to reinforce the player the fact that they couldn't quite get it right. Alternatively, just be really, really generous with the time. I think that was probably for me the biggest frustration was I ended up looking at a walkthrough because I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing. I'm totally stuck. I have no idea what to do. I can't go back. So it has to be possible to go forward here. And even then I had trouble doing it, knowing it was the right thing to do. It's
pretty punishing. The margin of error is very small. And the other thing that I thought might have been a nice subtle solution is showing some sort of visual effect for the current starting up to its full speed coming from the fan, so you know when your window of opportunity is to get through there before you're pushed back, and when the current, if they played like a current a current effect, of like the water rushing, and that's when you're going to get pushed back because you just don't.
Yeah, there's audio countdown of just like, okay, there's going to be 3 beeps, right? And
yeah,
hear 3 beeps, it's too late or whatever. I mean, just anything like that would help.
They probably wanted to obfuscate it on purpose to make it harder or something. But yeah. So anyway, it's just they're out of place in the game. So
yeah,
and at least I can't remember too many other harder core puzzles like that. So and then the funny thing about the Warrens is then after that let's see, is the next thing you fight the boss for the first time? You get basically, is that the next thing?
You get the three-headed
3-body boss.
Yeah. I was going to say human centipede, but it's not exactly that. I don't know. It's like a human.
Yeah, you're in the right ballpark, though.
I don't know what to call that, but
terrifying. By the way, I did write a note down about this. What is the deal with because we've played so many games of this era of this ilk that there's just so many creepy
blobby body horror.
Yeah, it's so funny. We go back through the podcast and every game that was a 3D, whether first person or third person game, the creatures were always very similar. I don't know. It must have been just a trend happening.
Yeah, with this one, I wonder if it's just taken from the license, that Samichi do this sort of weird body stuff and so
maybe
these particular things, and maybe it just straight up comes from that. I don't know.
I don't think so.
What I thought was really funny was that then you were like, okay, well, this is a boss fight. I also took me a while to get out of that room. That
was janky.
There's also kind of a red herring. Maybe it's for the combat, but I didn't need it for the combat. With
the catwalks.
The catwalks above. I guess you could go up there and probably shoot it. That's partly why I would be tempted to go back and try this game, with all the XP I have built up, as a run and gun game instead. Would it just be better? Because that's something that the engine does better support than Melee. But you fight that one thing, and then in the next area you're in, there's 6 of them. So it's and you don't have to fight them if you're careful and if you're ready to run away and hide and things like that. You can sort of, after a while, I was like, it takes too long to fight these things and, recover. It's dangerous. So let me see if I can sneak and get by them and things like that. But
I snuck through that whole thing quite easily and avoided everybody. However, once I even got frustrated, not sure what I was supposed to do next, which I'll explain in a second. Then I just started running, and the big ones couldn't quite catch up to me anyway. And they seem to have some sort of limit to how far they'll chase you. So it's it ended up being very easy just to run away from them for me.
I discovered the same thing, that it made it actually easy. I actually pulled one off of it where it normally was, which made I had to get past it to get to the exit or the next stage. That you had to find a key card and go find the computer thing to drop down to get to where the actual Nosferatu were.
That key card was that was the thing that I missed. That was frustrating.
I got lucky there. I found that first. One of the rare cases where I'm happy I find the key, and I'm like, oh good, I'm glad I found this because I know I'm going to need this to get out of here. It's gotten pretty common. It's a trick they use again and again to have the key card that you have to find to get out of the area, whatever that area is. There's another one you'll come up with in Chinatown that there's a couple things where you need keys to get through doors that you'll find as you go. Ugh.
We've talked about this on the podcast at various times, though. It's that was another stuck point for me because I got to that final chamber in that section of the Warrens and I didn't have the key, and so I just kept going down and down, so I just missed the body that had it. And then I kind of realized, oh no, I'm going to have to go back all the way through the war, and just scour every corridor, every turn, because there must be something I missed, and it ended up being the case. But I burnt a lot of time on that trying to figure out what was going on there. So yeah, a little old school, but
although I will say I did like finally getting to where the Nosferatu were in their warrens. I don't know if they have a name for that, but their actual living area. It reminded me a lot of, I think it's called Lamplighter caverns in Fallout 3, which is an area that's like heavily mined to get into. And I remember there's a ton of like mutants on the outside of it, but you can make your way into Lamplighter, which it kind of was it was an echo, or I don't know, a precursor that kind of reminded me of Lamplighter. And I don't know that was specifically being referenced there by, I think it was Nate Perkypile actually made that area for Bethesda, but whether it was or not, it was like, oh yeah, I like this kind of place. You know, they had huge blood pools too, which was like, ooh, that's kind of gross and creepy, and I'm not sure how much sense it makes, but it was cool looking. So, it was pretty, I liked that area once I got there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was a good payoff. And I think seeing like all of the debris and like the neon signs and, the doors are made up of like a bunch of random doors that they, it's basically like they're below, a dump, or something, right? Where there's like,
but it's the Hollywood dump, so there's, movie posters and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a Nosferatu, it was neat for me, at least. Some of it was in my head, of course, entirely, but some of it wasn't, in the way that they would respond to me, right? In the voice lines, because there's 2 NPCs and then Gary down there. And so it was fun to kind of talk to them. And I'm almost done with the one hacker quest that actually is quite a long series that takes you throughout the whole game. And then the one for that other lady that was, lots of problematic stuff with that quest. As far as like what you're doing and such, but it was neat to be among my people, down there, and they definitely, it was the first time that a sort of quest area or group, of NPCs sort of related to my character in a normal way. That was kind of cool. And I think that's another place, obviously, as we talked about, that allows the game to shine, because each of the characters that you play are so different. So I would assume there's some moment like that for everybody, right? Where you're like, oh, this is my clan.
These are my people. Yeah. I mean, certainly you've got the Bruja, who are the only one that I don't know if you can play as, but would be a gangrel. And the only thing there, I haven't seen anything other than the gangrel who protects the prince.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I haven't seen, something sort of clan related, because you speak to a couple of Tremere, you speak to the Bruja, who are mostly the anarchists or anarchs or whatever they're called. Certainly Nosferatu, I had my place, you have the prince who's a Ventru, and
and then there's what is the bald guy with the red glasses on?
I think he's also a Tremere.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's 2 Tremere. I think there's that one, and then Isaac.
Isaac,
I think, is also a Tremere. I think both of them are the same.
The game. I mean, as we're about to talk about getting to Chinatown in a bit, but I mean, the game definitely, as I think we've mentioned a little bit too. I think it's fulfilling its job of like being the sort of quote unquote best of the franchise. Because all of the concepts are things that you'd read about in the books. But and sometimes meet if you're doing sort of tabletop, but it's just nice to have like all of these sort of cameos, right? And these sort of legends and the myths about all of these sort of creatures and stuff that you're meeting and characters. So that was neat. And I think Nosferatu specifically, with the whole identity of them being the info gatherers, and meeting that hacker down there was great. Did you talk to him much and kind of get his story?
Yeah, I talked to him a few times. I don't know if I'm back there now. So I was trying to race through to get through all the Chinatown like main story content for today. But I got to a point where I'm stuck and can't figure out how to move forward. So now I'm going back and seeing if I missed something somewhere. And so I thought of maybe starting with the Nosferatu, because I knew there were quests there that I had not picked up. So I'm specifically doing that right now. And I did talk through, his dialogue is very funny at the beginning because he's hacking and he's making all these, I mean, it's definitely a very 90s. It's totally Hackers, the movie, right? Yeah. You know, of him like, oh, no, you didn't just do that, blah, 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 you know, that sort of thing. Like he's talking to his opponent, you know, who is the person on the other side. Like, oh, you're just going to open that email with the embedded virus? Okay, I mean, you could just go ahead and open it, I guess. You know, I mean, he's very funny. And it's also funny to have those, like, I don't know if that's a commentary on the programming team or if it's, you know, just a commentary on, I mean, I guess it makes sense with what the Nosferatu do, right? They're the information gatherers, so they would be up to date on technology. But it's also just, I don't know, I found that very funny that the hideous people are the programmers. I mean, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, that's sort of built into the to the books, though, right? So which are not computer game based. So. Right. But yeah, I'll roll with it. I'll take that. I think you're right. The
Tremere, the pretty ones are the designers. Clearly, they're all the theater people.
Exactly. Yeah.
We never got into that theater. Did you ever get into that theater? By the way, the Nocturne or whatever.
I won't say.
Okay. Whoa, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. You do. Yeah, it's a side thing, and you're very close. You're very close now.
All right. Oh, that's probably Tawny or something. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's related to that hacker guy. So.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the thing.
But it's cool. It's actually neat because that's one of the last things I did before. Because again, I got stuck. Well, not again. We haven't talked about it in detail yet, but I got stuck on Chinatown, so I kind of started going back through and cleaning up stuff. And I wanted to level up a little bit because I hit this boss that you haven't hit yet. That super difficult for me, at least. My speccing decision with going super melee, which I kind of knew this would happen. In fact, not only that, but I sold all my guns and my melee weapons. I literally
oh man, never do that. Oh,
well, I almost did it as a way to like force myself to, you know, to give myself a challenge of like really committing to that. Mm-hmm. And finding, because you know this
is the equivalent of me playing a bard in, you know, Baldur's Gate 2. I just want to point out.
Well, I mean, it's also a little bit like you never using anything but the default weapon in games, or it's like,
that's true.
What they give me, I'm going to just use this the whole time. Which is
it's not the default weapon; it's the unique weapon.
Oh, I thought it was always like whatever the first weapon is they give you.
No, it's more like what's the weapon that's special to this game. So if you know in like Tomb Raider, it's like, well, the bow, right?
Yeah,
in the new in the Tomb Raider you worked on, you know, it's like, oh, it's the bow. Like I'm not going to use why would I use a gun? They put all this into the bow, right? You know, or whatever. So it's,
fair.
It's more that. It's more the what is the thing that they leaned into, and you know, here I haven't really done that. Although I would say the melee is the thing that they had to put the most effort into. So in a way, that's what we're both doing currently.
Well, and I think that, but we're doing two different versions of it. And I think I chose the harder one because the tabletop actually, and as you can probably see in this game, even in just the loading screen hints, they talk about it a lot. I've noticed, melee, basically bladed weapons are actually, the way that the fiction works in the world is that bladed weapons are highly lethal to vampires, you know, and in fact, guns are not as much because they can take so much damage that it's less effective. It's good against everybody else, but against I don't know if that's true in this game because we really haven't played that way, but that's supposedly how it is. Like, you know, guns for humans and bladed weapons for vampires is sort of like, I guess the idea is you're like cutting their heads off or something, you know, like that's how you really get to it. So you've actually might have chosen, but I'm just punching things, you know, so it's like, you know, and so it's not, there's been times when I knew it would come back to bite me because you know, a lot of the bosses are melee based themselves. And so I have to get close to them to really do any. Well, I guess you do too, but anyways, it's been rough, and I wanted to commit to it because if it's the old, if they let you do it, then they should support it.
Right.
And I don't think that's completely true in this game. I think that is generally, obviously they'll let you spec the way you want to, and in your case, you're not even specking at all, so clearly it doesn't matter that much. Yeah. But I think in certain cases they didn't have a consistency like, say, a Deus Ex would, where if you want to play a certain style, the game supports that style pretty much everywhere. But I think there's some cases where a boss is like, no, you better kind of go over to your ranged weapons for this boss. I know it's not the thing you do, but this one, you better go buy a gun or something, So, because obviously the way that I'm playing also means that I have way more money than I need because I don't buy anything. I'm just punching and yeah. So anyway,
so you don't go back to the blood bank dude and buy blood from him?
No, I that was one of my new thoughts, that I did have some stuff. Actually, do you think I have some? But I actually have almost never used blood bags, which is probably something I should be doing to get through some of these fights.
Oh, for the tough fights, I like to have a couple on hand just to, and there's that thing that I think I found at Pishy's place that stores blood that you can use to restore it. I don't know if that heals you. This? I forgot I had it. It's some item I think I picked up in that haunted.
There's a lot of trinkets. We never talked about the trinkets, but I actually think those are neat because I found a new one that gives me +1 dex.
Oh, interesting.
They're all spread around the world.
Yeah, I haven't found any others. This was the only one. It was a device that when things bleed around me, so basically using a melee weapon, that's nice. It goes into this cup that can hold up to 10 blood for me, and I can just drink from the cup. I can just use the cup and restore 10 blood, I guess. So
where did you find that?
I'm pretty sure it was in that haunted hotel.
Maybe I haven't and I didn't realize how it works. Because
it looks like a shell or something like that. It's like a... Oh, no, she gave it to me. I definitely got it there. She gave it to me maybe when I gave her the first part. Yes. When I gave her the thing I got in the museum, she traded it to me. So I was like, oh, you can have this then.
Oh, you mean the lady in the haunted... You mean the haunted hospital?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said hotel. I meant...
I went way back. I was like, at the beginning of the game?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I haven't done... Yep. By the way, can you get... How do I get back to the museum? If I didn't get that trinket in the museum, can I never
go back?
Well, I don't know. It's not on the map where you fast travel.
Oh no, you may have missed it. That might just be a failure for you now.
What?
That's a bummer. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Because I still have that quest is still open.
Yep, but I don't know. Yeah, I got it when I was there. I mean, I was looking more for that. It was like, I don't care about the story thing, but where's this weird fetish thing?
Well, see, the thing is I hadn't revealed that quest from her until after I did the museum. So I didn't even know to look for it.
Oh, that's wild. Wow, that's broken. That's not cool.
That sounds broken. I thought maybe there would be, like in Hollywood, there'd be like a zone like the graveyard where there's a door someplace I could go to the museum again, but it's not on the fast travel map at least. So I might have to look that up, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't care that much, but I haven't gone to the mansion yet, the Giovanni mansion yet. So in the quest it says there's another item there for her.
Right.
So I'll make sure I get that one. But yeah, throughout the world usually they're just literally laying in random places. There's these items that you pick up, just like when you find a ring or a watch or something, right, to just go sell for money. There's sometimes these trinkets that are laying around that have properties like one of them increases your health recharge. Like I said, I just bought one in Chinatown that gives you +1 dex, but the others I've all found on the ground someplace. There's one in the Warrens.
I don't think I've found any. Just that one that I got from her that's been, I haven't used because
most of them are passive.
I think the game has not been very difficult, right? So I have not found for the most part, I have not found I've needed to lean on any kind of buffing. I use the blood buff thing whenever I go into combat, just like to make the combat go faster. But fundamentally, I haven't really needed any of that stuff. And I think that ties into the thing that we talked about last week, is that this is not really about that, right? This is more of a sort of adventure game, dialogue heavy, heart, sort of RPG ish, kind of a light on the RPG side of things. It's
such a weird, I mean, I guess I just never quite understood what this game was, but it is such a weird hybrid of so many things, but it's not any one of them really either. Do you know what I mean? Think of the games we've been referencing. Like we referenced Deus Ex, Half-Life, Elder Scrolls a little bit.
Thief and System Shock too.
It's just such a weird. I mean, I'm sure that's why people like it, because it is such a not like anything else, and it is because all those games I just mentioned, I actually love all of them individually, and so having a game that kind of mushes them together is, I can see the value in that. It'd be really interesting to see how far they take that hybridization in the new one. If they lean into one direction or the other, or if they try to emulate that same sort of mixture, which is just a very weird mixture. And it'd be interesting to see how it does today with today's audience as well.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot more forgivingness, a lot more forgivingness going on here in this era, the first stuff.
I was going to say, more broadly speaking, this was a time where we were thinking about how, genres kind of dissolve, that you could tell story. And this probably was a game that was held up, to that sort of, here's an example type of game. I don't specifically remember that, but this was a time where some of the genre distinctions that had been pretty hard and fast before were starting to bleed away. And a lot of that had to do with many things going to first person at the time, and what that would sort of give you of like, well, now you're in a first person, like what was we were playing a Metroid that was first person, right? And so like a lot of things were sort of bleeding away to make everything feel, it felt like first person was just going to dominate everything. And that's turned out not really to be true. I mean, it's still obviously a very popular area, but it was, it felt like this was sort of the resurgence of like more first person. Like we'd had sort of the 2.5D first person stuff, and then fully 3D. And then it felt like, the 3D stuff was kind of a background that was always there, but never really brought to the foreground. And then again, at this time, especially with Half-Life 2, I think, it was brought to the foreground again, like, oh yeah, and genre, bending and blurring started to go away. I mean, a lot of those other games we've mentioned were kind of part of that steady background of like innovation in first person, different types of games you could do, Thief and Deus Ex and System Shock 2, etc. So just an interesting whole lineage of this, 5 or 7 years or something like that, 8 years, where it was, we weren't going any further in the fast-paced, first-person shooter, Unreal, id thing. We were more like, what else can you do with this point of view kind of question. And this feels like sort of getting to be the end of that, I think. Or I don't know, the end of the beginning or something like that, right? Because, of course, we're still doing it today. But
but the fracture and experimentation started to maybe settle down after this to some degree. And, and I mean, as a sort of like, probably it's going to turn out to be a fairly appropriate, very modern day comparison, as you have Cyberpunk coming out soon that is CD Projekt Red doing a first person RPG. Right. That I think is going to probably, though there's a lot of this game, and not to say that Vampire was an influence per se, but it is of the same ilk, but just many years earlier. And being a big Witcher 3 fan, and all of their Witcher games actually, I'm very intrigued to see how they translate to a first person game, because in a modern day setting. And the same will be said for the Vampire sequel as well. In a modern day setting, the expectations for a first person, if you have any action at all, the expectations are very high. And so, that again, when this game came out, the forgiveness was much different because you could mush all this stuff together and be experimental and be wacky with some of the stuff. But I think, we talked about some examples of like some of those, so sum of parts games not quite living up to certain aspects, and it eventually comes up to bite you by the end.
Yeah, I think CD Projekt Red has so much credibility due to the success specifically of Witcher 3 that they will, even if they don't deliver across the board on all of those expectations, I think that it's likely that they will be given a pass and have the time to improve it and things like that. If they need to, like I don't know what's going to happen there. I know they were recently pushed back again, and I haven't been really keeping track of it. So it's
they pushed back again. Yeah, no, for sure. It wouldn't be on this one, but like we were kind of talking about with some other examples that won't be named. It only lasts so long when you start doing some of that stuff. But yeah, they're we're not talking about Cyberpunk, but their quality level is high. So
yeah, no, I mean it's a good analogy though of like where we're kind of like making that swing through this again in some ways, right? So it's it's interesting. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that game but it's almost the perfect analog, modern day analog of this game. And of course its sequel obviously is probably even better in that respect, but because it's directly doing the same sort of thing. But yeah, it's totally, it's in that ballpark. Anyway, interesting.
So we've both played some of Chinatown.
But different parts apparently.
Yeah. I mean, so I think we talked about this concept with LaCroix, the LaCroix Tower or whatever it is, on a previous episode, where I was stuck for a while because of my my clan that I chose. As a Nosferatu, I wasn't able to talk to the security guard in the lobby of the building in downtown, and so I didn't really understand where to go. And then I kind of eventually figured out that there's a special sewer exit that gets me into the basement of that of that tower, and then it gives me to a freight elevator that then I can go upstairs to where but I had no indication of that other than there was no quest, there was no clue about that. It was just like, no, I had to actually just look on the sewage, the sewer map, and see that one of the exits goes into a building, which is, again, like I mentioned in that episode, is not a common thing. So I wouldn't have even thought to look for it. They didn't teach me that. That's something you need to teach the player that is even possible. And so I had that same clue in this case in Chinatown, where there's a building that I'm supposed to go to talk to a person to progress the main story. I go into that building and he's not in there, and I haven't seen him in there, and I have no idea. There's not many options. But then there's this hostess that that seats you at the restaurant, and she won't talk to me because I'm a Nosferatu. And so I had the theory, because of the LaCroix situation, I had the theory that maybe it was the same thing, but I haven't been able to find. I've gone to all the sewer exits and I haven't been able to find that. So
the other thing that's unique about Chinatown is there's more. I think it's the only place so far where there have been fire escapes. So it's possible there's another way up that way as well.
Yeah.
I haven't had to do that. You do need to get to an elevated floor. I guess it's just the second floor. For me, I have to speak. I spoke to that hostess and got up, and it tied directly into you had asked me in pre-show, well, there's this cutscene I saw, what's that all about? And I had the same reaction at the time of, and I went and like ran down the alleyway that I saw them go down and couldn't find them, and was like, what was that about? I guess I can't do anything about it. Here's some locked doors. Okay. Like, it's a little misleading. it's foreshadowing of talking to this guy, I guess, which
they ran from the Red Dragon, right? Is that where they left? That's where those people were.
I guess that's probably they've kidnapped her. They've kiki-napped her, as it turns out. That's her name, and that's what the quest is called.
Oh boy,
kidnapping, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, there's one of me on that team. And so it's I was in pre-show we were like, I got stuck in Chinatown. I'm like, oh, you must be in the same place I am, and it's like, nope, I'm stuck in a totally different place, and it's because of course you're a Nosferatu. So oh boy.
But you've given me clues maybe that I can try some stuff out to see now that I know that I know that the building is correct. I thought maybe that the guy I need to talk to is just not, he might own the Red Dragon, but he's not in the Red Dragon. So then I was doing that. Have you done anything with the import guy, that the gift shop? Have you talked to that guy, the old man in the shop that he has like a bunch of imports?
I did go into a warehouse for imports, but I didn't.
No, this is a shop.
I have not been in there. This sounds like a Gremlins reference to me, what you're describing.
I think it is for sure. I mean, this is definitely, there's a lot of pop culture in this game. Does he have any
gizmos he's trying to sell there?
I'm conflicted about the character. I really like the character in many ways, but it's obviously, as people might guess, there's a lot of poorly executed stereotypes happening in Chinatown. And so it's definitely been rubbing me the wrong way in that regard. So it's hard, but that character in particular is interesting. I think there's not only Gremlins references or sort of inspiration, but also maybe some Blade Runner in there. You'll see why if you do his side quests. But then the reason I ask is that he has a string of quests as well, and one of them I'm also stuck on. I don't understand what to do because the doors are locked. So, but anyway,
I did not. I was kind of racing and trying to get through the main.
You're focused on the main
to get to most of the main Chinatown content, and then I got stuck on the main quest. So I'm glad to go back to. I was happy to go back to the Nosferatu area now that I could get there more quickly. It was kind of nice to be able to go back there and not have to go through the very complicated way. And the funny thing was, when I was like, oh, do I need to maybe go back to the Nosferatu? Because I think at one step you end up talking. Oh yeah, at one step in the main quest you speak to the Nosferatu guy. I mean, he tells you when you meet up with him that he's going to call you when you do something, when you free some vampire. And so I did that. And Gary says that to you. You have to free Barabbas. Which is not how you spell Barabbas, by the way. If you're going to use Christian mythology, you should. But anyway.
No, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Barabbas wasn't he one of the other two on the cross?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
In the place of Golgotha. Oh no, he's the one that they free. That Pilate frees is Barabbas. He's a thief. Anyway. Yes, there's a side trip into my Catholic upbringing, folks.
Yeah.
Right. So you free this guy, and there's a phone ringing, and basically you pick it up, and it's Gary, and I'm like, and then I had this moment of fear of like, oh, maybe I need to go back and talk to him. Oh no, how do I? I had a momentary like, I don't remember exactly
how to get there,
where to do that, and then I did sort of piece it back together just from my memory of coming out, but it's the only time you come that way, and so I was lucky that I remembered. I think it's called Sin City or Sin something, but it's the sex shop, and I was like, oh, that's right, you come back out through the sex shop. But I was doing it in reverse, right? So I didn't, it's that thing where if you come through a place in the reverse order, you don't necessarily recognize that that's the same location you've been. And I had that moment of I was glad I had caught that, I don't know, neon light or something that's well placed, I guess, in terms of level design, because it made me remember, Oh, right. I must have gone into this building to get to the, or I must have come out of this building when I came out of the Nosferatu place. Oh, that
Wait,
was wild.
so how did you? That's not where I came out from the Nosferatu.
It's the way you can get back in. There's signs down there, I think. Yeah, what's her name? The woman who used to be a supermodel.
Amalia, I think.
Yeah, she has the Sin City neon light, and I think that's to tell you can get here through Sin City.
No, but I'm saying when I exit the Warrens to leave the Nosferatu area, I come up through the crypt in the graveyard.
That's right.
That's that right. Where you come up?
That is where I come up. That is where I come up. Okay. I forgot. No, I went back to Sin City because because I thought that's where I came past, but it is what I came past because that's in front of the entrance to the graveyard. Okay. That's what it was. That's how I found my way back. Anyway, it was the sex shop. Yeah, right. was that was my landmark of like, oh, I came out by the sex shop, right? And so I made my way back that way. I think there are like visual linkage there that helped me make that connection, but I forgot I even went all the way back down to the crypt to actually do it. That's funny.
Well, I only mentioned it too because I thought that was.
Well, that would be weird.
Another
if I had a difference like that, that would be a pretty big
right. Difference. That's why I was freaking out for a second. I was like, "Wow, that is quite different."
You could do that, obviously, at the time, but that would be pretty wild.
Well, they have. I mean, as we've already talked about with being in Nosferatu, they definitely have alternate, entrances to things. Clearly, but I only mentioned it because I really loved having the. I wonder. So, would you have automatically gone to the crypt for that quest? I don't remember if the quest that you do in the crypt is mandatory before going into the Warrens, but
it is.
But I did it beforehand, and so the fact that you go in there and you've been in the crypt and you've kind of
right, and then you come out,
around, and then you come out and you're like, oh, where am I coming out?
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I really laughed at that. Like, that's really funny that I have just been here, and it was probably the next, set of. Yeah, the next set of coffins over or whatever, there was the secret entrance. Yes, now that I remembered it on the way out. I did laugh pretty hard. Like, where am I? Oh my god! And I had a good chuckle. I thought that was a good sort of level design / game design joke of like, we made you come here. It's to get whatever something from that woman's. It was the tape. It was the tape that the guy had hidden there to bring to Isaac, so he could tell you to go to Simichi's place in Kingsway or whatever it was, and then you went all the way through the Warrens to get to there to come back out exactly where you found the tape. It was a pretty funny joke.
It's a little pretty dastardly because the Warrens is such a pain in the butt as well, right? And it's just so elaborate. And now that we've met Gary, you could almost see Gary getting a snicker out of it because I actually thought Gary's character was quite good, and pretty memorable. Very, very Fallout, right? As far as like the ghoul, the kind of like the snarky ghoul who has a history kind of thing. So very, very cool character finally meeting Gary and who Gary was, and you get to his room and he's got like posters from his career up and stuff like that or whatever,
and he's got the Misfits. I think there's an implicit Eli Wallach joke there as well. I don't know, I might be giving them too much credit. So the Misfits, he mentions that he's having a dinner party for the cast of the Misfits.
Yeah, what's that all about?
That was the final film of both Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable. And it involved not a love triangle, but a love quadrangle, more or less, between Monroe, Gable, Montgomery Clift, and Eli Wallach. And Eli Wallach played the Ugly in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's a long walk. It's a long walk, but I think it's possible that's what they're going for there.
Well, they definitely were dressed like that. And there's only 3 at the table, right? And so he would be the 4th.
That's my thinking.
So Gary is Eli Wallach.
That is really good. Like if that was intentional, that's excellent. I mean, I applaud something like that. That's a very long walk though. So I'm not entirely convinced, but I'm not convinced. It's a pretty ghoulish thing to mention because it's actually, I think Gable died between filming it and it coming out. And she died it was her last film as well. So she died immediately after, or maybe the year after, something like that.
Wild.
So it's a kind of a famous film because it was very different for both of them as actors, for Gable and Monroe. It was very different from the sorts of things they normally did, and then they both died very around it. It's kind of famous from that standpoint. It's a good film. I recommend it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that is another sort of, to some degree, a testament to them trying to really lean into LA in general, right?
Yeah.
Like the mythology around the city, and I would obviously hope that the sequel would do the same for Seattle and stuff. And so I always like that, right? What are some other games we played that really have a good sense of, well, I mean, I guess, funny, this game Hitman, the one that I was going to say is Shenmue, because not necessarily, were those specifically real districts, or were they?
Shenmue is, I think,
those are real places,
based on real places.
Yeah. But I don't know why, but I've been thinking a lot about Shenmue lately. Some of it is this game and the structure of the game, but also just like such a, not to get off track, but just such an surprisingly interesting game that at the time that we were playing it, I was like, I'm not so sure, but it really has sat with me. It's so I can kind of see the cult following around that. But the only reason I bring it up for Vampire is the sense of place, right? It's because you're going back and forth, which is a segue to another quick topic that relates also to the chain of the quest chain that you just mentioned about how we got through the Warrens and came out into the crypt. And that is, so we talked in the first episode about sort of the good sort of connective tissue of a location design of, like, say, the blood bank that we talked about, or the clinic, right? Of being like a microcosmic example of that. Now that we've been to every location in the game, we're starting to see different side quests interrelate to other locations, and in some cases lightly side quests and main quests in this case, right? So there's some good examples of quest design, as Brett was just saying, with how it led us to the crypt and then back to the crypt on that same chain, right? So there's this sense of like familiarity with these locations, and there's for me, the reason I love coming out of the crypt, coming away from Gary's place, was there's a moment of revelation there for me too, because you're like, oh my God, that's where I am, and it's coming at it from a totally different direction. And so that familiarity is very, very powerful. And so if you network your quest design that way, it's also, I want to echo, like, it also is, it's coming full circle on something like the Nosferatu, who are the most undead looking vampires, right? Yeah. So they're also in the graveyard, which totally makes sense for them. Like, that's the place that they could safely be, right? Yeah. It's a lonely place. They also fit in. They're the most zombie-like, right?
Exactly.
Coming out of sort of proverbial coming out of the ground. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And as a Nosferatu, coming out of the crypt felt cool too. You know what I mean? But yeah, I just there's some good design in there of the connective tissue and cross sort of pollination of quest design in once we've opened up the game this much. You know what I mean? It's not perfect, and I think there's games that do it better, of course, but in this phase of this era, and we've talked a lot about these developers in particular, this was some of their bread and butter of like having good quest overlay within, especially in secondary quests, within the world structure. And as we talked about up front, this was the first time that these developers, Troika and Leonard and those folks, got to try their hands at a 3D world. So it's really interesting to see how they're mapping that onto it. It doesn't always work. Like I said, we've gotten stuck, and there's some miss.
I mean, I think to some degree it's the precursor for what Ubisoft's design is attempting, the buttons it's attempting to push with their styles of game, right? Is that Ubisoft is trying to do the same thing, but in a very almost rote kind of way, right? Because there is no real
macro
customization of, it's a very much like, well, we need, 6 different collectible things that we can basically, or 6 different repeatable things, let's say, not even just collectibles, but that we can layer on top of the same space, so that players who like this, they can go do a bunch of this all over the place. They can climb 20 different towers and uncover all the map spots, or they can do all the different, I don't know, heists, or whatever. They can do all the stuff, right? And they can find all the collectibles, they can find all the treasure boxes, they can find all the outfits, whatever it is, all the different things that they have. But it doesn't have what this game has, which is that you care. Right? Yeah, I mean, right. That you're hooked in, and you want to go do it. I feel compelled to do it in Ubisoft games because I'm such a, check off the to-do list guy. Yeah. I mean, I see all those icons. I'm like, boy, I'm going to be busy for a while. And that just, it's fine. But it's also it's not the connective tissue of a good story where you go, oh man, that's amazing that came back around to that. I was wondering about that place on the map. I was wondering about this location I couldn't get into. There are some that I've noticed, across multiple levels where I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get in here. I think they're often a little clumsy in how those unlock. But I'd rather have it there and be clumsy than to have it be there and perfect and soulless. So,
I think that's how they have gotten away with so many of these games and the structure of these games with the writing, and still have them be kind of unfinished. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or
unfinished, unpolished,
or unpolished. Yeah, because it's and again, not to talk about your former employer, but I think that's Bethesda's bread and butter as well, right? It's the sum of parts gets you so far because it's such a crazy accomplishment, and having the worlds be so interconnected and fleshed out, you forgive a lot of stuff.
All I can say now is really they're your former employer. That recent purchase. So.
Yeah. Okay. That in a roundabout way. Okay. But it also keeps. I don't think I'll ever get the time anytime soon. But I really want to. It just reminds me I want to play the Outer Worlds, because I do everything I've heard and read about the game it feels like it is a very, very good example of a modern version of this stuff. Because I think there's the structure, I think it's like 4 planets, and I'm especially because Leonard's on both and Tim's on both, Tim Kaine, right. Leonard Boyarsky, that I'm betting that there's a lot of this game structurally is in that game. It's just a modern version and a modern engine. So someday. Also, I have to mention, to totally shift gears, I just remembered there's another topic that I keep forgetting to bring up that I do want to...
I was going to throw us there next. Okay. I do want to say, I just want to throw it in here. I was looking it up. And now I can't find it, so maybe never mind. Oh, there it is. Episode 33, interview with Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky. There we go.
Oh, nice. There you go. Yeah. Good call. Yeah.
For those who haven't had a chance to go back that far in the archives, we do recommend the interviews in particular, and that was a really fun one. So for sure. Yeah, for Fallout 1. Yeah, but I think we talk broadly about other stuff, and they were clearly working on the Outer Worlds at the time, but couldn't say. Maybe their final small topic for this time is I wanted to bring up Tim Bradstreet and his artwork for White Wolf, and specifically I don't know if he did other White Wolf stuff, but for sure Vampire. And the reason I bring it up is the character designs in this game, and the characters, some of the sort of like quote unquote legendary characters that are just in the canon of Vampire the Masquerade in general, were coming from his character designs. And if you were a fan of the tabletop, and if you were a fan of sort of the look and the feel and
as we've talked about, even in the first episode, but probably throughout, of just like a little bit stuck in time, you know, of kind of like a time of the 90s and like early aughts when this sort of subculture was very popular and stuff. And in my opinion, as I said earlier, I don't think really is as timeless as other settings. But when I look back as a fan and as a player of the pen and paper, Tim Bradstreet's artwork is like just, you know, etched into my brain because it's so iconic. And he's a very good artist, amazing artist. He did comic stuff too. But if you look at Tim Bradstreet and Vampire, you'll see what I mean. And you'll probably recognize because, you know, he was the key artist, right? He was the key art for the whole franchise. And some of these characters we're talking to are ones that I remember seeing their pictures in the books, and the visual designs are his designs, you know? So, just wanted to bring him up as sort of one of those, you know, he's like the Ralph McQuarrie of Vampire or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say too, this is an early 90s, RPG, and it's some of the best. Like if you look back at D&D art at the same time in the early 90s specifically, it doesn't compare.
No,
right? I mean this was far above. I mean, that was
high
a good
quality.
choice. Yeah, very high quality. Good choice on behalf of you know, because I sometimes look back at like old Dragon magazines and things like that because I'm a giant nerd, and the illustrations are, even the cover illustrations, which is like, you know, what people see when they go to buy your magazine, are like, they're not great. You know, and I think by the late 90s they were much better. Basically when third edition kind of got D&D really going again, in 98 or whatever that was, 99 maybe. But this is probably 5-6 years before that, and I do know that the quality of that artwork was very high. So I'm glad that you got a chance to bring that up. So
yeah, he's definitely in the DNA of the franchise
for sure. All right, well, I guess we're gonna call it there for this week. We have no outstanding email. We have some email to reply to for folks, but it's not for commentary on the air. So we've got no reviews and no email this week. So no feedback section. You get a short but sweet episode this week.
Well, we hit our goal that we always have of an hour almost perfectly, and so we did it. Yeah. We did it.
Yeah, we did it for the first time this year.
Time ever.
But yeah, you can shoot us email at devgameclub.com at gmail.com. Sorry, I'm like already scooting ahead to the outro because that's my habit. And of course, we love your reviews. We try to read all of those on the air, singing or not. So go ahead and shoot us those. I'm subscribed to all the Apple Podcast ones, but if you use some other product, for example, Podcast Addict, as we discovered last week, just let us know if you don't hear it, and point us in the right direction, and we will get to you. We really appreciate them. So you know, it's one of the ways we reach out and find new listeners. If you've already done so, thank you so much. And you know, everyone out there, just tell a friend, find somebody who'd love our show and listen to it. We love you all. You can, of course, find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Before I fully finish this, I should probably say we're going to finish this game next week, in theory, and hopefully that is true.
Oh yeah, it'll happen.
I think it'll happen. I feel pretty good about that. So join us for that. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton and commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. I hope you are out there voting today as we're recording this, and maybe surviving the 16 years is going to be the rest of this week. Thanks so much for joining us, and good night.
Good night.